Vishal Manchanda. Vishal, before we get into your expectations for Q1 from the pharma majors, and we've got a flurry of them coming through, let me first actually say good morning and thanks so much for joining us and thanks for your patience. So let me ask you about these latest statements that have been made by Donald Trump with regard to the tariffs. And this is something of saber rattling that has taken place in the past, but it hasn't really, found any favor. Are you looking at it that way as well? Something that is a threat but might not emerge?
Yeah, hi, good morning. So exactly as you said, I look at it the same way. It's more of a threat and unlikely to emerge because I think it's a greater harm for the US for them to put tariffs on generics. And it may not be possible for Indian companies to kind of reshore production to the US, at least for the high volume generic drugs. It can happen selectively for the high value drugs, but not for the large volume drugs. And there is complete lack of clarity on what the tariffs would cover, whether it would also apply on the APIs, the final formulations, whether it would cover biosimilars. A lot of things need to be addressed, but unlikely, I think political legal challenges would make sure that these tariffs don't go through.
Vishal, before we get into expectations of the fourth quarter, the other question I have is, now 90% of the US market for Indian drug makers is, in terms of volumes versus the generic drugs. Now, out of this total generic drugs which are imported by the US, roughly 40% comes from India. If we have to break this down between the companies who are directly exporting from India versus the companies which have already have a manufacturing base in the US, do you see those companies probably seeing an upper hand right now?
Yeah, obviously the tariffs would go in favor of those who have a manufacturing base in the US. But ultimately, like what it will turn out is what things will happen is there's going to be massive inflation on generic drug prices. Because if you manufacture all what you need in the US, the prices would obviously go up for the generic drugs. And that's going to be detrimental for the masses in the US.
Okay. So if you have to look at the tariffs in one way and the expectations in terms of the sector as a whole, what are the key things that you would be watching out for? Because in 2026 already, the sector itself has seen a sharp run-up by now. So do you think there is further moat to actually understand what the numbers will actually look like? Or do you think it's going to be a situation where the numbers probably will be good, but it's going to be like a sell-on news kind of a strategy that everyone will look at?
I think the sector right now is like waiting for things to happen beyond the US. So US, as we know, is going to be weak this year, and then people will wait whether there are additional opportunities that can pan out in the US, or whether biosimilars can build out in the US, or probably companies can build their OTC business across markets and show better growth than expected. So right now, I think if we look at expectations, most companies over the next 2-3 years are expected to deliver either low single-digit earnings growth on the FY26 base, or probably even a decline on the base, unless they kind of deliver on something which is right now not in the numbers. And I think likelihood of they delivering something beyond numbers is less likely.
Okay. If I can do a rapid fire, Vishal, in the interest of time, if you will humor me, I will do my best to ask the appropriate question. So, between the cohorts of generics, biosimilars, APIs, and any other cohort in the pharma space, which do you prefer?
So biosimilars, I think, will do well in the next, say, 5 years. That's a large opportunity shaping up, and scarcity probably should drive some value there.
Okay. And in the cohort of stocks, which ones do you like and which ones are you likely to see a negative outlook for?
So anything highly dependent on the US for their earnings. So anything above any company that's 40% plus dependent on their earnings for the US market, I would stay away from those. And also to qualify, US generics market, not the US market as such, but the US generics, small molecule generics market.
Yeah, okay, so rapid fire. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Pleasure speaking with you as always, Vishal.
Thank you.